Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi, everyone. This is Simon Lovegrove speaking. We are just enjoying some wonderful technical issues right now. Charlie is a participant. That's his face you can see on the screen. I think you can see it on the screen anyway. Here we go. Oh, no, wait a minute. Here we go. There we go. Okay. Um, and he is a participant, so I'm just about to unmute him. And then I will be doing his slides and he will be speaking. So hopefully we'll make the whole thing work in that particular way. So Charlie, you're now unmuted. Would you mind just saying hello, and then I'll do you a proper intro?
There we go. And you may want to put the slides, Simon, into the whole presentation mode, because there's some old notes that are below that I think will be distracting.
Yeah, I'll do that now. So everyone, this is Charlie. Charlie is a longtime friend and colleague. He is a professor of management and leadership at Hult University. He has developed and created a number of different business support tools and written several books in the leadership development and organizational development space. Today we're talking about using assessments in different contexts, and this is something that Charlie has a huge depth of experience of over the last 25 years. So I'm going to hand you over to him. He's to our friends. He's always known as the brightest person on the block, and he's also happens to be very, very creative. So I'm sure we're all going to enjoy his presentation today. Charlie, over to you.
Thank you, Simon, and welcome everybody. I'm calling in here from California, and it's nice to meet everybody online. I think one of the things that has me so intrigued about assessments is I got into the coaching and organizational development practice because it's what I love, and I started though looking at the companies that I thought were so successful at engaging clients in more profound ways, and over again, it looked like through various means that these consulting companies created and built various assessments as the point of entry of going into organizations. So if I think about the Gallup organization and their Q12 assessment and how they actually look at engagement and what they did, also the whole idea of strengths finders. They had a model, they built strengths finders from a lot of their consultants actually left and were using their model for hiring and selecting, and so they wanted to come up with something that was proprietary. DDI did job analysis, and they did that really well. The Table Group has an assessment around dysfunctional teams, and over and over again, Bain Group does an assessment on decision effectiveness, and again, a lot of the tools that people use are points of entry into organizations because it allows you to both assess something inside of the organization, and that allows you to, in many ways, be informed about where you can target the value. I've used a number of different types of assessments over the years, and then I still love, because it does so many things, the whole function of a personality assessment. And so I just want to frame that a lot of my presentation today is going to be using the tool that I'm most familiar with. That doesn't mean that it's the only tool to do this. In fact, there's a lot of not, in the domain of assessment, there's really not a lot of differentiation. You want to find the tools that fit you, fit your practice, fit creating the value for your customer. And I find that personality assessments do so many great things as far as crafting and creating trust. And so the tool I'm primarily going to show you is the tool that I created, because it does everything that I wanted to have happen in a tool, but it's not the only tool. But you can see how I've used my tools in many ways to grow a depth of relationship with my clients. So next slide, Simon.
Oops, sorry. Okay.
Yeah, so I think that this is one of the things about any type of personality assessment is that it's instantly relevant to individuals, because in many ways what happens is when you do a personality assessment, you can do it in an aggregate of a group or a team or anything along those lines, but it's so powerful in its relevance to another individual, and because it's all about them, right? And by the way, the 4 traits that we measure, directive, expressive, systematic, and considerate, these 4 traits have been around forever. There's nothing new. It's 2,000-year-old technology. One of the things that I didn't like about the DISC model, and a tool that I used previously called the Drake P3 or Solexis, is the fact that they would call people at an identity level dominant or patient or conforming. And those are identity level statements, and they have, they really do, because they're identity level statements, that whatever the assessment is that you're using with your clients, you need to feel comfortable with the labels that are going in, because you don't want the first move that you make as a conversation with somebody is apologizing for the tool. If you don't like the tool, find a tool that actually works for you, because they do start to take on a life of their own inside of the organization, and you want to be able to use terms and labels that are the ones that you feel comfortable with. Next slide.
Charlie.
Oh, go ahead, Simon.
Let me go to the slideshow, and then you can choose your slides there. The problem, everyone, is that I'm running the slides and Charlie can't see what's coming up. So why don't we go here, and then you can see what's coming up in the deck, and you can just say to me, look, go to the relevant slide number. I think it's going to make it easier for you.
Hold on. Oh, you mean the fact that I'm actually saying stuff before the actual slide? Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, I just figured that some of what you were saying was relevant to some of the slides coming up, and I thought that's because you can't see what's coming up. So that was. But if you're happy to continue as we are, then I'm also happy.
Yep. Go ahead.
All right.
Next slide.
Okay. Good. All right.
Yeah, and this slide pretty much talks about it. I find that with anybody that you're working with is one of the hardest things to do is the point of entry is to create value. And if you're lucky enough, I often will get a new client because somebody who's moved and gone to another organization. But if you're going into an organization cold, you need to have something that establishes you as the expert and establishes you as kind of a trusted advisor. And this is the power of assessments. Next slide. Yeah, and this expertise is valuable. I think one of the things that's fun about personality assessments that is fairly consistent is people go, how did they know that about me? And the engineering behind the tools are robust enough that these stable personality trait characteristics can be identified in assessments, and you can create that aha moment. And you don't have to do anything that amazing as a consultant or as a coach. Is you're letting the tool do the heavy lifting for you. Next slide.
Right.
Yeah, so there's basically, before I went in and I did another, built a tool, I looked at actually how many there were, and there's over 2,000 assessments that are out there. So if you can't find something that's fits, you're just not looking, because there are at a minimum 2,000 tools that are out there. One of the things that I feel is everybody sits there and goes, oh, my tool is a little bit more predictive, my tool is a little bit more useful, my tool is a little bit more, and they all have utility, and we're often measuring very similar, stable human personality characteristics, or aggregating those styles into lots of other reports. But you just want to find something that fits for you and your practice, and then just use a lot of it. I mean, if you can get a vendor that'll just let you have kind of unlimited marketing profiles, that's something that we provide for our coaches. Is we don't want to exclude the use of it. We want to empower the use of it. But that was also my philosophy. Is even though I'm using the tools to create value, I really want to. I'm using it to build that initial client relationship. Next slide. And like I said before, the whole idea of people being directive, expressive, considerate, and systematic is nothing new. Social Styles does the same. Discovery Insights, DISC. The reason why I didn't add in the fifth factor from the Big Five theory of personality assessment is, in a corporate or a team building setting, the high trait of neuroticism is not usually a positive one. And then you've got to, again, explain, oh, I'm sorry, you're high in this characteristic is not a team building type of conversation. And I'm always looking for, and the reason why I built this tool is, how do I create an assessment or a tool that I just don't have to, again, like I mentioned before, apologize for the tool. Next slide. So one of the things is we thought that there was room for improvement. There's no reason to build another one if there were 2,000 out there. But one of my clients is Yahoo, and was in a meeting, and Marissa Mayer was saying mobile, and it really stuck in my head. And it's one of the things she did really well. She shifted. There was declining display ad revenues at Yahoo, and she really did shift the revenue into mobile. They were late to the game organizationally as a company. It's just that I heard this as something that was quite powerful. And so the thing that I did that was different with my assessment, and also makes it more accessible, is I put it in the phone. I can't tell you, of all the assessments that I've received and taken over the years, how many of those PDFs live at the bottom of my drawer, buried somewhere on my computer. And the thing that we wake up to the first thing in the morning, and this is usually the last thing we look at before we go to bed, is our mobile phone. And so I put the tool on the phone. Next slide. One of the nice things about having it be as a mobile phone is that I found that in personality assessments, the most powerful aspect of the personality assessment is when you compare your profile to another, and you go to seminars and trainings, and people are either wearing colored hats or stacking Lego bricks or doing all kinds of things to get an understanding of the personality traits, when we have a supercomputer in our pocket. And so the second thing that I did in my assessment was to put the assessment results in the phone, but allow you to compare your profile to anybody on your team or your customer or your client. And that means you're going on in to coach somebody, you can look up their personality trait characteristics, compare them to yours, and actually get insights about how to coach that individual or how to communicate more effectively. Next slide. And then the final thing here is the email platform. So we put the phone and the assessment in there, and we built an email platform basically so that it's kind of the administrative aspect of these tools. Is I felt that we could do and take advantage of some of the technology and integrate it into the phone by incorporating a newsletter, email campaign that understands where somebody's at in their progression with the phone. So we have education, but also it allows you to conduct a marketing campaign by putting the emails of your customers and your clients in as a way of getting them engaged with a particular tool. So those were the kind of three big ideas that I generated that was differentiated from the marketplace. But it was less about the assessment, again, because there's so many out there, and more about the delivery vehicle of the assessment and how do I make the assessments have more value both for the coach or the consultant and also for the customer. Next slide. Yeah, there's something about being of service. I don't know about anybody else, but this is why I'm attracted to the coaching profession. And I like being able to genuinely help people to actually craft and create a relationship with them. And so if I can add genuine value as my opening move with a customer or client, providing insights into their team or their organization, that's a huge win. Next slide. So I've done this, and this is where, you know, I've gone on into organizations to build a relationship, and you want to engage the CEO of a company, and you just go, do you know what the traits are of your senior team? A lot of times senior teams don't have the highest kind of, by the time people rise to a senior team, a lot of their communication skills are not that effective. And I've had to coach a lot of senior teams in how they need to partner better with one another. And so this just easily allows you to run a kind of team analysis report on the highest levels of an organization. Next slide. The other thing is if your coaching practice is more towards the recruitment side, and one of the things that we have a lot of our customers that use this tool that are recruiters, and they use a lot of these reports to kind of figure out, okay, what's the ideal candidate look like by actually profiling the most successful people inside of the organization. And so they can use this to land a new recruiting client. Next slide. And here's the thing that I think is so valuable with these particular tools, and it has to do with getting insights that establish kind of credibility for yourself when coaching someone else. And one of the reports that we create is it's like 28 pages, but it actually gives you the questions to ask and the territory to explore with your customer or your coaching client that just helps you have, again, a point of entry for coaching using the personality trait information as the foundation. Next slide. So I think one of the things, this slide is actually from the vision that we had originally. Is as a small business, we had the vision of what if we could actually help people communicate better everywhere with the most important people in their lives. And so one of the things that we did inside of our tools, instead of restricting the tool, is we actually empower the tool to we empower the tool so that people within inside of the app can invite not just their work colleagues, but family members, and they can communicate more effectively with their family members by learning what the personality traits are of everyone, even children and parenting. And so it's, again, it's, if you're going to be communicating with people, my point of view is why be restrictive? In fact, if you can learn how to communicate better on the home front, you're going to have much better communication in the work front, and vice versa. And so we didn't want to restrict the usage of the tool. We wanted to empower the usage of the tool. Next slide. So there's certain things that happen where personality assessments can give you a true advantage in partnering and working with individuals, and one of which is influencing. And influencing is if you know from a sales profession or partnering or working with somebody that you want to influence somebody, knowing what their personality traits are huge. There's different characteristics are 100% necessary to shift or alter your traits to better partner with somebody else. I think the same is true of customer service, and what you do in that arena matters. I honestly use the tool with my own children as far as the parenting is concerned. And with parenting, there are my two kids are very different. I've got an expressive son and a systematic daughter, and how I parent to both and how they and what they need from me is different. And that helps me understand conflict and enhancing a team's culture, understanding of the whole team dynamics. If I know somebody's personality traits, I know exactly how to motivate that individual. And all of this leads to a more informed understanding from a coaching standpoint. Next slide. So you want to find the right point of entry for your customer. Next slide. And we talked about this as whether it's the primary profile. You can see on the far left, you know, this is the person's low trait is directive and their high trait's expressive, and they're kind of midline on the considerate trait and below the midline for their systematic trait. Now, those traits are not high and low, doesn't mean better or worse. It's just kind of representative of how much of that particular trait characteristic you have, and this is a way of representing the information. But again, giving somebody a profile about who they are is phenomenal as a way of a point of entry. Coaching is great. We've got reports that have to do with the leadership styles of individuals, and so that's a great coaching conversation. And you want to be able to sit down. A lot of my engagements are about helping develop the leadership capacities of individuals. Next slide. We do a lot of work inside of the safety arena, and these personality traits directly relate to how safe somebody is. There's team building reports and an aggregate of what a group is and the culture, and if people can understand what their primary trait characteristic as a team and their adaptive profile, it just gives you incredible kind of insights and can share insights with the team about what their culture is. Do they have enough diversity of thought? Do they appreciate somebody's style who's different than maybe the team leaders? And then again, all of this information, and one of the things that I did is I built a tool that was robust enough in construction that it can work as a pre-employment tool. And this kind of gets into the test, retest validity and the predictability of the engine. And also the way that we designed the survey instrument is you can't actually fake your way through the tool. It's got a, and we didn't have to adjust for a favorable self-presentation. So we built it so that it's very predictive and can be used in a pre-employment environment. So again, if you're helping your clients interview better, team reports, safety, you've got a suite, and you want to have a suite because you're not really sure what's going to add the most value for your customer. Next slide. So, you know, one of the big areas that we consult in and coach in is helping teams become more effective. And Teams has just gone to, you know, work today is that we're in the information age. And so the old way of working, which is specialization, autonomy, control, and individuals, is replaced. Everybody's working inside of teams. And so having access to helping teams work is you're positioning yourself for the future of work. Next slide. Here's the thing that's amazing about the team research is most teams, right? You know, if you think about this, is 86% of most teams have room for improvement. And so you've got 14 of most teams that are effective. So even though it's the future of work, there's huge science supporting most teams can improve in their efficacy. And one of the ways that they can improve is knowing how each other are working. Next slide. So there are 5 team issues that you want to take a look at. Next slide. People in the wrong roles. This is one of the things personality traits addresses, is it can actually help you put people into the right roles. There's the classic study where Southwest used personality traits and they realized they needed to put introverts, loading the bags, and they needed to have the extroverts actually doing customer service. And so they got people into the right roles and customer service went up. Next slide. Again, over and over again, most teams a lot of times they don't understand the diversity of thought that goes into getting the best idea, and they let the communication challenges get in the way of the different personality traits instead of using the difference to enhance the kind of diversity of thought. Next slide. Yeah, this kind of just is that same one, is that even though the lack of diversity of, or if you do have diversity, you may run into communication issues. If you don't have diversity, you actually are doing groupthink. Next slide. And one aspect that a lot of our research has proven over and over again is that everybody wants to work for a great boss. We think about engagement and disengagement. Every bit of research that we've done around this is the relationship between the employee and the boss is huge. So if you can actually have a leader understand who their team is so that they can actually engage them in the way that they want to be engaged, it's a huge value provider for an organization. Next slide. And this is the biggest thing, is that if you can get a team that's actually kind of doing this unwitting sabotage, and part of what happens is with difference, biases show up, and with biases, you end up getting an individual that just doesn't have you just can't have a high functioning team if people are sabotaging each other because they just don't have an appreciation of the other traits that are on the team. Next slide. So you knowing your team and building your team is all about this personality traits of the team. So if you can actually take a look at a visual and get an insight, and if you look at this team is much more expressive as a trait characteristic, and then you can actually have an informed conversation about what's going on with inside of that team dynamic. Next slide. So let's go back to the primary profile and just talk a little bit about the difference between the two. So the primary profile is who the team really is. One of the things that in our tool that we measure is we measure the primary trait characteristics. This is who somebody really is. These are usually traits that are formed between 0 and 5 in somebody's personality trait characteristics. And so as a team, it's useful to know what the primary profile is and how the high trait and the low traits are, because this influences it. So you've got a high expressive team here with the low systematic. We also do something which is an adapted profile. Next slide. And the adaptive profile is how this team adjusts to the environment. Again, you'll see in the little mini graphs, it'll be the aggregate of the various profiles of the individuals, but the adapted is how people are at work. And oftentimes the insights that can happen, and there's two, not in this slides, but there's two visuals of the previous kind of compass view that you can actually compare and contrast between the team adaptive profile and and how their primary profile is. That can give somebody insights you can coach from. Next slide. One area where a coach can actually add huge value, and it's this high risk. When somebody actually has somebody new join a team, whether it's an internal move or somebody coming from the outside, you want to help that group form a depth of relationship really quickly. And most onboarding is regulated to things like, here's your computer, here's your desk, let's go out to lunch, and that's it. One of the reports that we've created is, next slide, is not only team communication report, but if you go to the next slide, oh, it's not there. Okay, well, there's a whole report and a visual that actually is a team integration report. And this is like a 30-page report. What it does is it actually takes the individual, and it takes the individual, it actually moves that individual from and around to various new team members, and it introduces them, but at the level of personality traits. So it generates a series of questions so the new team member can bond with their boss, and the new team member can bond with their leaders and subordinates. And again, whether it's a team report or a new hire integration report, what it does is it all creates cohesion. Next slide. So these 4 traits are valuable to know, and knowing them gives you a leg up, but they all interlink. By the way, we all have aspects of all 4 traits. We just have higher and lower aspects of those traits. Next slide. Yeah, so in communication, people are more easily influenced by people they perceive as similar to themselves. And so if we understand how we're different on the team, we actually have a leg up, and we can truly understand our team members and can fundamentally, either it's putting the right people into the right roles so they're going to flourish, or it's helping people communicate more effectively. Next slide. I think one aspect of traits, and you may find that this is a part of your coaching practice, is you may be brought in to help 2 people that aren't getting along, and actually how do they resolve conflicts. And so if you have, and part of what we've done, you'll notice even the size of these kind of information cards are screen size for your phone. And so everything that we've done for providing supplemental education around helping either our customers or our coaches that are using the tool is we just want to make sure that everything's accessible in the phone. And so with this, you can have conflict resolution by applying this tool. But again, it's all on your phone. It gives you suggestions quickly for how you can coach individuals. Next slide. This slide just gives you an aggregate of how the trait characteristics start to blend together. If somebody is both high in the trait of systematic and considerate, they'll also be very analytical. If somebody's high in the trait of systematic and directive, they'll be very conductive. They'll get stuff done. If somebody's high in directive and expressive, they're going to be very persuasive. And if somebody's high in the traits of expressive and considerate, they're going to be very supportive. And so all of these aspects are just helping people get stuff done in a way that is their style. And it's just, again, we find that the basic 4 traits are a great introduction. But a well-researched tool should continue to unfold over time, that it can add levels of nuance and depth into people's understanding of one another. You want it to be simple enough so that people can get it at the beginning, but you want it to be complex enough that it continues to unfold. Next slide. So one of the things that we did is, because they create insights, they create value, and they create trusted relationships, is next slide. Oh, well, let's go back to that slide because it doesn't have the piece what I want to share. Go back one, Simon. Is that, nope, right there. I don't know if you can see it, but down in the lower left-hand corner is all of our reports are branded with your name and your consulting information. So that, again, we use this to support our customers to go on out there into the world. And what we've engineered is just that everything gets branded with your information on every single one of the reports. So if anybody does have a PDF report, that it goes back to you. And the other thing is we have a pretty robust back-end engine so that you can see who's been invited, who's been surveyed, and as far as growing your database is concerned, if you choose to turn on in the feature in the phone where they can invite others, your customers can actually help you build out your database. So it becomes a viral growing of relationships. So you may end up, I've had this happen where a friend of mine who I had provided the assessment and the profile to in the phone, and I turned on her ability in the phone to invite other people. She invited a client, and I ended up with a new hotel firm that became a relationship from nothing that I did, but by allowing somebody else to invite someone else, my network grew and I was able to acquire a client that way. So a lot of times these insights and values that you create is you sometimes are creating a trusted relationship that somebody else actually built for you. And that I think is a huge kind of opportunity to grow your business. Next slide.
Before you start, Charlie, just to say to everyone, there's a question panel in your control panel. If you've got any questions, please drop them in there because I'm looking at those. I can see Jane Summers Kelly. Thanks for Jane for your question.
I'm not seeing any.
Say again. Sorry.
So I'm not seeing the questions, Simon.
No, I'm going to read those to you. It's fine.
Oh, good.
Yeah, okay. Jane, I'm going to just leave that for a bit because I want to. I know where Charlie's going, and I think that we'll answer your question in around 10 minutes or so. But again, if anyone else has any questions, please drop them into that questioning panel, and we will come to those in around 10 minutes. Okay, go ahead, Charlie.
Yeah. So I really do believe that having something where you can create a compelling coaching moment is huge. And if you can let an assessment create that for you, it's all the better. You don't have to do as much work. Next slide. Knowing what somebody's motivators are, we pretty much covered this, but I find it hugely advantageous to know how to motivate somebody. Next slide. Blind spots and challenges are huge. That graphic is the wrong graphic for blind spots and challenges, but that's okay. It's like if you know what somebody's blind spots and challenges are, there's a whole page that does make that. It lets you know here's where this person's going to be challenged, which is a great point of entry for effective coaching. Next slide. Yeah, I think, and the other thing is, the reason why we call these our tool is called knock knock, which is the knock is the naturally observable characteristic. Is there is nothing in this that's not observable directly with your senses. Do you need an assessment tool to know that somebody is super high in directiveness? Usually you don't. It just gives that authority and a validation. And this is, and whether it's my tool or anybody's tool, it just lets you have that kind of point of entry and starting place for creating value for your coachees. Next slide. Yeah, this kind of gets into how do you coach the different traits. By the way, all of this for us is generated in reports. So when we do a report, we'll give you the report. We'll give you a report about what you can give to the client about how to coach them, but we'll also give you clues about what you need to do to flex your traits to coach them. So all this is available. Next slide.
Charlie, do you want me to just skip over these because there's quite a lot of detail on those?
Yeah.
I figured you could get to the.
Yeah, it's good.
Okay.
Let's get to the. So we've got enough time to.
Yeah. And then we got.
Yeah, this is stuff.
Let me find it for you. Here we go. This one.
Do's and don'ts. Blah 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 blah. Oh, here's the new hire integration reports. There's the slides. Keep going.
I'm on job analysis is an assessment.
Yeah. So this is what I want to talk about is that I'm not the only consulting firm to figure this one out, but it has been multiple $1 million of revenue for my business by going in and being able to provide job analysis to organizations. And one of the things that we built into our tool is a complete job analysis suite of tools that are both personality traits, competencies, and behaviors. So a huge issue for organizations, and one of these aspects of working with organizations is that today companies are trying to find a way to identify the right individuals to bring into their organization and have them be successful and stay inside of the organization. And more than ever, people are mobile and making different choices to leave organizations. And so one of the things is this is a huge area that we use assessments for. And we use our job analysis assessment and our personality assessment to model the behaviors of high performers inside our organizations. So we go on in and say, would you like to have more of this type of person? And they say, yes. And I go, do you know what the characteristics are? Do you know what the competencies and the behaviors are? And usually the answer is a little bit, but they don't. And so we use assessments to help companies do the hardest job in their organization, which is the hiring and the selecting, and then subsequently the development of their people, because we know what the traits are and we know what the personality, what the behaviors are and the competencies are of the top performers for various roles. But because our engine can do this job analysis quickly, it adds a lot of value. But again, 46% of new hired employees fail within 18 months. Next slide. Yeah, most people leave because they don't have good relationships, not because they don't have the technical skills. It's not a fit from a culture standpoint or a trait standpoint to what the team is. Or their personality traits don't fit what the job is. So classic job analysis. Next slide. What usually is classic job analysis was from the command and control era of, if you think about Frederick Taylor and work studies, but it's for manufacturing work, so that you could do this. And next slide. it was all about doing the KSAs. Next slide. It was all about the uniform guidelines and employee selection procedures. Next slide. It was all pretty boring stuff. So this department, it was all, everything about the job analysis. There it is, pretty boring stuff. So what you wanted to do is completely document the job. So modern job analysis, which is what we're advocating and what we've used with our clients, has some unique differences. Next slide. So instead of documenting the job, even though we do document the job, we're actually going and how are people going to be the most innovative in that function, and how are we going to innovate, helping people grow in the particular role. Next slide. And by the way, we described the job, but we're also creating an influence in that, because our particular tool will layer in what's next for somebody in their career. It influences people to grow and develop themselves. Next slide. And this kind of gets into the whole idea is object is in a manufacturing environment. If you're helping somebody, do automation, this kind of an object view of the job is okay, but what people need to know is what their true role and responsibility is, and how they're going to relate to others, and the interdependencies that go along with that. And what are the kind of core competencies and key behaviors necessary? Next slide. So, the whole idea is imagine how easy it would be to be able to provide that type of insight and knowledge to your customers. Next slide. So what we do is we actually model through surveys and statistical analysis the core competencies and key behaviors of high performers inside of organizations. We also take a look at the low performers, and it's interesting. You can get some great contrast, especially if you understand what are the personality traits of the individuals that are not as successful versus the ones that are. Next slide.
Sorry. There we go. It should start the secret of every job analysis.
Yeah, so I don't know, there we go. So one of our surveys gets to the importance of a particular behavior, how frequently you do the behavior, and the difficulty. And what we mean by the difficulty is it something that's actually inherent, or can it be trained? Next slide. Huge value to organizations is if it's difficult to train and it's an inherent behavior, then the emphasis has to be more on hiring solutions, because you're not going to be able to train it. You're going to be wasting money. If the things that are needed, that are necessary, or deal with inherent characteristics, then you've got to put more dollars into the hiring. If it's something that's easy to train, then you can actually put the emphasis and the dollars into the training environment, because you can actually grow that kind of ability within inside of your existing talent pool. And knowing that is critical in any job analysis process. Next slide. One of the things that I found is that with the modeling, next slide, that you get, modeling is the observation of what people are doing that are successful. It can be hugely expensive inside of, to hire a consultant to go on in and observe what the workers are doing to really discern the models of the behaviors is a huge expense. And so one of the things that we've built at this backend engine, you can see just a snapshot of the engine. We've got dashboard users, template. We've got a whole thing down here as far as the job analysis piece and building custom interview packages. But this ability and having a suite of tools where we can actually engineer the competency accountability with behavioralists, modify this, and then put out the surveys and generate kind of insights around frequency, difficulty, importance, that we actually get statistical knowledge for the job analysis piece going on in. And like I said, this particular tool for me personally has, I've had a client that's generated over the years because I use this as a point of entry. By the way, I didn't have the online version when I landed the first client doing this, but there's one that generated over $8 million of revenue for our consulting business. Another one that's generated like 6. We've got a new one right now that's going to generate a couple million. And so the reason why I say that is because this point of entry into organizations, I'm not the first one to figure out that helping companies do the job well of identifying talent and knowing how to develop that talent and to be able to coach and performance management to that and have a tool where you can give them all of that information is significant in creating trust. Next slide. Because what we're doing is we're helping them reproduce excellence inside of their own organization. That's the whole idea behind modeling. Next slide.
Charlie, let me go back
Yep.
to the slideshow because we've got 10 minutes, and I want to allow you to pick up not the slide deck here. Jane's question, I'm going to read it out now because I think it'll help sort of focus the conversation for the last few minutes. She has a non-survey specific question. To leverage your experience, how do you decide whether to get accredited in a survey, given our clients often have an assessment they use or prefer when they come to us, and we can't invest in 6+ team surveys? Have you got any advice or mindset or views on that point? And you can see the last part of the slide deck is here. So if you want to pick up on any slides while you do that, then please do, obviously.
Well, maybe we could even just talk about the, we can go down to even other assessments because it kind of gets to that. But it's, but let me talk about this question. And I getting certified in somebody's tool is a bit of a scam. So because at some point in time, and what I mean by that is if you're certified in DISC, you'll be able to pick up my tool in 2 seconds. Now you have to get nuanced in understanding mine. But at some point in time, once you get involved in assessments, and using assessments, pretty much we're measuring the same things. And so then you kind of go to, do I make the investment in the accreditation? We've actually built ours as an online kind of micro-learning component. We do animations that take everybody through. So I've realized this, and so I can certify people pretty quickly. It comes down to, though, if say there are tools that are out there, whether it's the Myers-Briggs type indicator. If your client's big enough, then you may want to go get certified as inexpensively as you possibly can, because your client's using it and it'll be informed. I know Discovery Insights, you're going to have to get certified to use that particular tool, and they're just a lot more rigorous around it. And that's how they built their particular model. So it just comes down to size. I'm sorry that vendors are kind of scamming people and they're getting, in their tool. And yeah, if that's how you get to, have access to the back end of their reports, you just know it. And I think I'll reframe it. Each vendor will have something that offers a little bit difference. And I do believe like there was no way for me to build my own tool without actually having exposure to a lot of other tools. And I knew what I wanted and what I didn't want. So there was a knowledge base that I acquired by being exposed to a lot of different assessments over the years. And so it just comes down to, does it make economic sense for you to go get certified? And at some point in time, you just got to sit there and go, okay, what am I? And I do believe that what you learn in one tool will help you with other tools, because most of what's being assessed are fairly stable characteristics. You know, I've done enough research in this arena that we as vendors package it up, you know, differently. But if a personality trait characteristic is fairly stable, it's stable for every one of us, whatever the engine is that we're using to build our tools. So that kind of gets into, you know, when I think about these, it's just assessments work.
Yeah.
I'm running into the hour. Any other questions that I can talk about?
Yeah, Jane, if you want to make any comments, I've unmuted you. And if anyone else wants to make a point or ask a question, please just raise your hand. You can see a hand button on your control panel. I'll unmute you, and please then ask your question.
Thank you, Simon and Charlie. No, you answered it. It is an economic decision. I've looked at your website, and is yours free? Is it $79? You've convinced us. What should we do?
Well, look, it's both. So what I mean by that is that there's, you know, we do revenue sharing if there's revenue that gets generated, and yet part of our licensure is to give people unlimited free marketing profiles. So yes, we say that there is a both. And how do you, you know, we engineered ours to go get, you know, to go get business, and that was kind of the intent behind it. And that's when I've used others, I've been frustrated at the limitation of using the profile for marketing or having to pay a lot of money for that. And so I just engineered mine to, you know, and the way that I did it was kind of did it. I wish somebody had created my tool that I could actually didn't have to go do it, but it didn't exist. And so I built the one that I wanted.
Great. Thanks, Charlie. Great. Well, I'm not seeing any hands raised. If anyone does, then please do. I'm going to just put, oh, here we go, a shy group. Thank you, Jane. Yeah. I'm going to put this last slide on the screen, because if you do have any other questions, or if you want to pick up anything, wait a second, no, I didn't. I clicked the wrong thing here. Here we go. If you want to pick up anything, then there are Charlie's contact details on there. So please go ahead and just email him or Skype him. And you can obviously sort of talk about not kind of any of the other personality profiling or team assessment profiles that Charlie has encountered as across his research. Great. So look, Charlie, thank you very much. That was very informative, and I apologize about the technical difficulties, but I think we kind of made it. And certainly you did.
We made it. Well, you made it work. That was pretty. It was not ideal, but it was. You know, it is what it is sometimes. That, by the way, that is one of the problems with technology and assessments, is you are dealing with technology, and every once in a while technology has its own inherent kind of flaws. So you just kind of you buckle up. So thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thanks everyone. All right, thanks a lot, and bye.